African Youth Leadership Diplomatic Conference 2026 is a continental event unfolded here in Addis Ababa in the Principate of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa from March 25 until 27th of the aforementioned year. The event convened young people from across Africa under the theme From Policy to Action, Accelerating African-Led Solutions for Regional Peace and Stability, which was aiming to strengthen, consolidate, and empower young leaders of Africa, strengthen youth participation in peace building, and bridge the gap between policy and implementation. Addis Media Network has attended the opening ceremony of the African Youth Leadership Diplomatic Conference 2026 in full length and beholds you to attend the captivating, motivating, and instigating speeches delivered by the young African leaders. Stay tuned.
This international platform, organized by collaboration between Ethiopian Youth Dialogue for Peace Association and the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, the Addis Ababa City Administration, and Intercontinental Youth Connect, aims to bring together young leaders from across African continent to engage in dialogue on pressing international affairs. We are not here by mistake. We are gathered here in the heart of Africa because 16 years ago, our leaders had a big dream. People told them Africa was too divided. They said we were too poor to matter. They were told our voice would always echo from the margin of the world. But leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, Julius Nyerere, and Gamal Abdel Nasser refused to believe that lie. When they looked at the map, they didn't just see borders, they saw destiny. They built the Organization of Africa Unity, not merely as an institution, but as a declaration of self-respect. They understood something the world is only now beginning to understand. African future will not be written for us. It will be written by us. Their generation fought for liberation. Our generation must fight for interdependence. Look around you at Addis Ababa today. This city is more than diplomatic capital. It is a living manifesto. The rising horizon, the expanding green space, the growing technology hubs, these are not just signs of urban growth. They are a symbol of something deeper. They are a sign that Africa is no longer defined by its potential. Africa is beginning to define itself by its power.
Anne Mugwagwa, originally from the Republic of Zimbabwe, being herself a young leader in continental structures and currently also serving a finance director for the Intercontinental Youth Connect, pointed the young people are the architects of the continent's destiny.
It is with my deepest sense of honor and profound awareness of historic moments that I stand before you this evening on behalf of the Intercontinental Youth Connect. We gather here not only as young people attending a conference just any other usual day. We gather as architects of a continent's destiny, as the living embodiment of Africa's greatest and most enduring resource, that is her youth. The theme of this conference this year is From Policy to Action, Accelerating African-Led Solutions for Regional Peace and Stability, which speaks with clarity and urgency of our times. For way too long, the narrative of Africa have been written by voices that are distant from the soil of Africa. Today, we declare with one united voices as youths of Africa that Africa's history shall not be authored by with one united voice that Africa's story shall not be authored by Africa's own people. The solutions to our challenges lies within us, in our communities, in our schools, in our cultures, in our collective wisdom, and above all, in our unrelenting will to build something greater than what we inherited from our forefathers.
The Human Rights Specialist in the Political Affairs, Peace and Security Department of the African Union, Seraphine Kando, on her part said this is a defining moment for Africa to move from policy to action.
As we gather at a defining moment for our continent, a moment that calls on Africa to move decisively from policy to action and to accelerate African-led solutions for regional peace, governance, and stability. So the African Union has progressively institutionalized youth participation as a continental priority through key normative and policy frameworks, including the African Youth Charter, and notably its provision on participation in peace. There are also the Continental Framework on Youth, Peace and Security, as well as decisions from our Assembly of Heads of State and Government and Peace and Security Council. These instruments mark a fundamental shift in perspective, repositioning youth as passive, not as passive beneficiaries of policies, but as partners, implementers, and co-architects of governance and peace processes across the continent. This has been emphasized here in the introduction by the moderator. So in this regard, under the political guidance of the African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, the department has been working to operationalize youth participation across 4 strategic pillars under governance, human rights, election, and peace building, including transitional justice processes. This integrated approach reflects a growing recognition that youth inclusion is not a standalone agenda, but a cross-cutting imperative that underpins sustainable peace, democracy, governance, and resilient society in Africa.
Africa isn't the continent of tomorrow. It is the continent of today's decision, was remarked in the opening session as the African youth were paying due attention.
For too long, the world has spoken about Africa as a promise of the future. But let me say this clearly today. Africa is not the continent of tomorrow. Africa is the continent of decision today. When I look at this room, I see the future of continent. I see the entrepreneur of Lagos, the innovator of Nairobi, the writer of Accra, the builder of Kigali, the dreamer of Freetown, the leaders of Zimbabwe. Some people look at Africa and see division. They see language, tribes, religions, and cultures, but they misunderstand us. Our diversity is not our weakness. Our diversity is our engine. Our ancestors fought to free the land. Our generation must learn to connect the land. We must build Africa where our economy moves together as natural as our music. Imagine this. A developer in Addis built software for farmer in Senegal. Designer in Lagos branding product made in Rwanda Djibouti. A renewable energy startup in Cape Town, powering factory in Tanzania, Somalia, and Uganda. That is the new spirit of Pan-Africanism. Not just political unity. Not just political unity, but practical unity.
The presence of government officials amongst the young people gathered from all over Africa was a point entertained as a source of pride, where the young people's cases are considered to matter a lot.
To the distinguished government officials and leaders who honored us today, coming from different parts of Africa, your presence today is not just a mere visit or an official visit for the state. We are deeply honored and grateful to have you. Having you among us, we feel warmth, as it shows that you're supporting our initiatives as youth from different parts of Africa. Your attendance is not a formality, it is a covenant. It affirms that relationship between governance and the youth of this continent is not only one of spectacular and a performer, but of a partner and co-builder of us youths. We call upon, with all due respect and with sincerity, this platform commands to carry within the spirit of this conference back into your halls of power and to translate the ambitions of African youths into policy, into investment, and into lasting change in Africa. The Intercontinental Youth Connect was founded on a singular conviction that access to leadership, diplomacy, and opportunity must not only be the privilege to fulfill. It is our solemn commitment and our defining mission that this platform must reach every corner of this continent, whether in the boardrooms of Nairobi or the village of squares of rural Zimbabwe or my hometown Chinoi, where I come from, whether in the markets of Dakar or the highlands of Ethiopia. Every young African must know that their voices matter, their ideas have power, and their future is not determined by circumstances, but by the courage that is within us.
Across Africa, as was witnessed by Serafa and Kando, a new reality is unfolding where the young people aren't sitting and waiting to be included, but they are already shifting governance, peace and diplomacy in tangible and transformative way.
A new reality is unfolding across Africa. Young people are no longer waiting to be included. They are already shaping governance, peace and diplomacy in tangible and transformative way. They are leading civic movements that demand accountability and justice, shaping digital governance through innovation and transparency tools, and acting as informal and formal diplomat by building bridges across borders through culture, entrepreneurship, and advocacy. So this reality confirms that the challenge we face today is no longer new readiness for leadership, but institutional readiness to recognize, align with, and support the leadership that youth are already demonstrating. And I'm sure all of you present here, young people, are already demonstrating this leadership. So across the continent, we see inspiring example of this leadership. We see some of our member states appointing at ministerial level or electing in parliament young people to represent them. And we have this example in countries like Botswana, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have a young lady who is the deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and she was Minister of Youth before being appointed as Minister for Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. And this is a demonstration that Africa is moving on the right space. In addition to that, our commissioner has emphasized the need for young people to participate in all Africa Union platforms. And there is a target of 50% that we gave to ourselves to ensure the participation of young people. And I'm sure you need to appreciate my commissioner for leading our policy in this direction.
Africa no longer suffers from shortage of ideas, yet the African shelves are full of it, as to what was reiterated during the launching of the ceremony.
Africa does not suffer from this shortage of ideas. Our shelves are full of strategy. Our institutions are full of declaration. Our conferences are full of resolution. We have Agenda 2063, but let us be honest with one another. Peace is not written on paper. Peace is practiced in community. Regional stability cannot be imported. It must be cultivated in our village, our city, and our economy. A continent that trade together will stay together. A generation that build together will lead together. The era of waiting for external rescue is over. The future of Africa will not narrate in shipment from overseas. It will be built in classrooms, laboratories, startups, and community of this great continent. As an organizer of this conference, I see your hunger for change. Big goals like Silence Again and Agenda 2063 are just slogans. Until young person has a job, until a child has a school, until a business owner has a market to sell. Our job is clear. We must stop looking across the ocean for answer and start looking at our neighbor for partnerships.
The African Youth Leadership Diplomatic Conference, as to Mugwagwa, shall transform itself to a more powerful space to give more power to the African young people.
As we chart the path forward, the Intercontinental Youth Connect pledges to expand this initiative to take the African Youth Leadership Diplomatic Conference beyond these walls and into communities that it is needed the most. We will be building bridges across borders, across languages, across generations. As you see today, we have people from Congo, we have people from Nigeria, we have people from Zimbabwe, we have people from South Africa, we have people from different parts of Africa, which shows that language doesn't separate us, cultures doesn't separate us as youths. We will build bridges across borders, across languages, across generations, because peace is not built in convention centers alone. It is built by person to person, household by household, community by community. The Africa that we all dream of is peaceful, prosperous, self-determined, will not fall from the sky. As youths, we must construct deliberately and diligently by hands like yours and mine. This conference is not a destination for a holiday. This conference is the beginning of something new and beautiful, a continuation for all the summits and diplomatic conferences that we've been holding here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. As youths, let us rise to the occasion. This continent demands of us. Let us move boldly, unitedly, and with purpose, from policy to action.
The African youths, as to the assessment by the African Union Peace and Security Department, are already doing their best for the peace and security of the continent.
So there are also young people that are really doing well in terms of contributing to peace and security and good governance in Africa. I just want to mention Ashaleke Christian, who is advancing peace building and preventing violent extremism at the community level. Cynthia Chinwenya, who has contributed to shaping continental and global policy discussion, including engagement at the United Nations Security Council. And Ilward Elman is transforming lives in Somalia by creating pathways from violence to dignity and reintegration. We have Gatwal Yul, who represent the power of youth to transform lived experience of conflict into global policy advocation. So these examples are not isolated. I know all of young people here represent this example. You have a story behind the fact that you are sitting here today to represent the young people of your country. You have impacting already, so you are already the leadership. It's not for the future, it's now. So this example, as I said, they reflect a broader continental trend in which youth are emerging as credible and effective actors for change. These actors of change, you will agree with me, are really inside this room, and you need to make an ovation for yourself for what you are achieving in Africa, and for Africa, for African people.
The courage of the African young people is hailed as the greatest resource of the continent of Africa in the presence of the African youth.
Let me say something that I believe with all my heart. The greatest natural resource in Africa is not oil, not gold, not land. It is the courage of its young people. But the courage alone is not enough. We must also build. So I challenge you today, young leaders, stop waiting for a seat to the table. Build your table, your own table. Move from activism to architecture. Don't only protest broken system. Design new one. Think in decades, not just in days. The Africa we want will not be built by being patient. It will be built through hard working and discipline. In conclusion, my fellow Africans, our forefathers liberated the land. But it is our generation that must liberate the future. The task before us is not small, but neither was the task faced by generation that came before us. They faced colonial empires. We face inequality and instability. But just like them, we possess something powerful. Believe in Africa, believe in each other, believe that continent once divided can become continent that leads. Let us honor those came before us by finishing the work they started. Let us make Africa-led solution not a slogan, but a reality for child from Cape Town to Cairo, from Dakar to Jerusalem, from Addis to Algiers. The world is watching, but more important, Africa is waiting for us to lead.
Importantly, evidence across Africa consistently demonstrates that most young people have not chosen the path of violence. On the contrary, they are actively engaged as agents of peace, working to rebuild trust, strengthen institutions, promote social cohesion, and advance inclusive governance. This underscores the urgent need to move beyond narratives of risk and instead invest in youth as strategic partners in prevention and peace building. And this has been our message from the African Union. In response to this evolving reality, the African Union, through the Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security, has taken concrete steps to translate policy commitment into action. The New for Peace Africa program has created a platform for meaningful youth participation across the entire peace continuum, including conflict prevention, peace building, and countering violent extremism. Complementing this initiative is the African Youth Ambassador for Peace. And the Youth Ambassador for Peace serve as regional advocate and operational actors, supporting national action plans, facilitating mediation efforts, and strengthening youth engagement in peace processes at all levels. A particularly transformative initiative at the level of the African Union is the WISE Youth Network. Established as a subsidiary mechanism of the panel of the WISE within the African peace and security architecture. This initiative institutionalized youth participation in security, preventive diplomacy, and mediation by developing a pool of trained, deployment-ready youth mediators, strengthening youth engagement in dialogue processes, and creating pathways for youth to contribute directly to African Union peace efforts. WISE Youth represent a paradigm shift from viewing youth as observers of peace processes to recognizing them as co-mediators and active agents for conflict prevention. Beyond peace and security, significant progress is being made to strengthen youth participation in governance. Through the African governance architecture, the African Union is supporting member states of the African Union developing youth civic engagement frameworks, policies. At the same time, continental dialogue and partnerships with national human rights institutions, civil society, and youth networks are advancing efforts to move symbolic participation to structural inclusion of youth in decision-making processes. In the electoral domain, targeted efforts are underway to transform youth from passive voters to active guarantors of democratic integrity. This includes the deployment of youth within the African Union election observation missions and the establishment of youth-led situation room to monitor risk. And this, as part of the election monitoring missions, the African Union established a target of 50% representation of youth in all election observation of the African Union Commission. So the youth situation room also contribute to monitor risk and provide early warning on electoral violence and capacity building initiative to strengthen youth competencies in election monitoring and democratic processes. These efforts contribute to increase youth ownership of elections while enhancing transparency and conflict prevention. In the area of human rights, youth are increasingly recognized as both right holders and defenders. They are actively engaged in continental and international human rights dialogues and also at the forefront of advocacy on emerging issues such as digital rights, civic space, and accountability. Youth-led initiatives are also central to countering hate speech and disinformation with the establishment of continental advocacy and collaborative platform, positioning youth as digital peace builders and agents for social cohesion. In post-conflict contexts, youth play a critical role in transitional justice processes. They contribute to truth-telling and reconciliation efforts, participate in national dialogues, frameworks, and support post-conflict reconstruction. It is in this regard that the department has also established a program called Youth for Transitional Justice to support transitional justice processes in Africa. As witnesses of lived experience, advocates for justice, and drivers of reconciliation, youth are essential to building sustainable peace and restoring social cohesion. These efforts are further strengthened by broader institutional ecosystem that include the Office of the AU Youth Envoy, Youth Advisory Council, the regional economic communities and regional mechanism, and civil society platforms. Together, these actors amplify new voices, ensure policy feedback loops, and support implementation at national and local levels. Despite this progress, important challenges remain. Youth participation is still too often limited in terms of actual decision-making power. Resources allocated to youth-led initiatives remain insufficient, and coordination across institutions can be further strengthened. Addressing these gaps require a deliberate shift from participation to power through institutionalizing co-decision-making mechanisms, scaling youth deployment in mediation and governance processes, and strengthening the integration between the African governance architecture and the African peace and security architecture to respond to conflict prevention in Africa. Ultimately, the trajectory is clear. The African Union is moving towards a new model in which youth are no longer participants at the margins of the systems, but are increasingly becoming architects of Africa's governance, peace, and security architecture. The responsibility before us is therefore collective. It is not to prepare youth for future role, but to ensure that our institutions, policies, and system fully align with the leadership that youth are already exercising on the continent.
Well, as you have attended, the opening ceremony paid attention to these speeches and to other speeches delivered from the Ethiopian side and other important international organizations. You can also learn other important information from the social media platforms of Addis Media Network.